All right, and now I am joined by my guest, Anna Giaritelli. I'm sorry, Anna, you're going to have to teach me how to pronounce your name again. We've established how we pronounce Jackson. It's now Jackson officially after Anna has given me a new pronunciation for it. But first, I want to do this, Anna. There was some video that you have online, and follow her on Twitter. But I want to show this video to the audience, and then I want to get your response to this video. And then you've written some great columns at the Washington Examiner about the border crisis that is occurring. And man, I gotta be honest with you, Anna. I don't even know how to frame this thing anymore. I say border crisis, that doesn't sound strong enough. I say invasion, and then I feel like we have a president that's inviting them in. And I feel like Mexican cartels are basically running our U.S. border policy. So maybe you can help me frame that a little better. But first, let's play your video. Let's get your reaction to it. I mean, honestly, I don't even know how to fathom or comprehend this, Anna. And also, we are in the summer has just ended, but you're talking about a hot August, hot September so far, and the numbers seem to be increasing at our southwest border, not decreasing.
Yeah, where to start is really the question. So, I always like to give context. Under the Obama and Trump administrations, we've seen upticks and such, but typically over the past decade before Biden took office, 30,000 to 50,000 people were apprehended at the southern border or in a month, right? And 50,000, that's not a small number.
Sure.
Last month in August, we saw over 300,000 people.
That is insane.
And that includes 50,000. That's, some immigrant advocates would say, oh, the 50,000 of that number doesn't count because instead of coming to the border, they were allowed to fly into the country through a new parole program, but they're not refugees. So, but all that to say is, yeah, and those numbers have been between 150,000 and 300,000 since Biden took office. They have not, excuse me, they have not gone down back to the norms. And the Biden administration is always celebrating wins if it does go down for a month, as our policies are working. After last month, they said, well, it ebbs and flows. And people are still coming here from all over the world. And, the Republicans have pretty much given up and said, this isn't incompetence by the Secretary of Homeland Security. We think this is intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. And Anna, I got to be honest with you. I mean, I'm with them. I appreciate the fact when I read your columns, and I was reading some over the weekend and just going through them again today. And where can people find you on Twitter, by the way, Anna, because I want to make sure that they follow you and we get that information in before we really get into this here. So where do they go to find you?
My last name is impossible. So I would say search Elon Musk and then look at his recent retweets.
That is so freaking smart. Yeah.
It's ANNA _ and then just start with GIA. And it's a verified profile, which doesn't mean anything anymore. But yeah, and I'm on Instagram too. And that's kind of a fun way to, a little more video oriented.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been doing this for covering the border for the Washington Examiner I've been with the company 8 years, and this is year 6 covering the border. And been down across the country to the border over 50 times. And I never thought I would see over 200,000 apprehensions in a month. Never. I wouldn't have. And
because that was insane. And now that's being dwarfed.
Yeah. And what we saw in Eagle Pass this past week, we were seeing 3,000 to 4,000 coming across in this town of 30,000 per day. Border Patrol has gotten so good under the Biden administration at processing and releasing. It's just, you have to keep the system moving like a drain. If you get a clog, you're going to have what happened in Del Rio. You're going to have 14,000 people living under a bridge, and you don't have the infrastructure to move those people sort of through the system.
That is, Anna, if you could just pause there, because I think that's so important for people to understand. What Anna is saying is basically our border patrol agents, all they're doing now at this point, it seems, is catch and release. I mean, they're just releasing people into the interior because the lines are so backed up. There's so many people that are trying to enter the United States. They can't hold them. They simply can't hold them. The facilities are just overwhelmed. Is that, just for clarification? That's essentially what you're saying here, Anna, right?
Yeah, and we've had catch and release even under Trump. The
Sure.
administration, Trump released over 1 million people into the country. Biden is well over 2 million releases into the US at this point. That's what we're seeing in cities like Chicago and New York, and even the state of Massachusetts and Maine, saying we can't handle all these people arriving and asking for help. Um, but it's not, one thing I want to underscore is it's not Border Patrol choosing to do this.
Sure. Sure.
It's
Fair.
not your agents on the front line. Believe me, they are as pissed off as they can be.
Sure.
Um, they're just doing their orders. They can't not do it, and so it's a you're supposed to process people. The Biden administration has said if you come from certain countries, including Venezuela, and you don't go through the legal avenues, such as this parole program where you can fly directly into the U.S.,
Yeah.
we will return you. But what we saw in Eagle Pass is majority Venezuelans crossing and not getting returned. So it's one of the things we're going to be, asking the White House about this week is why is there this difference in what you're saying and doing? But you're supposed to be able to put people through removal proceedings, and we don't have time for that. The Biden administration doesn't want to detain people. So ICE is releasing people and just saying, here's a notice to appear in court 3 to 7 years down the road. You can seek asylum at that time. Um, and so it sets people up. So even if you really do want to wait 3 years, go
Sure.
to court, and they say, you know what, you don't have a case to be here. We're going to return you. Then it's, what your immigration lawyers are going to say is you can't take this person away from their family. They had a baby here. They met their
Exactly.
husband. They have a job. It just continues this. You're going to have a need for another DACA for all the kids that were brought here illegally.
This is why, Anna, I have a hard time believing even Republicans, and I don't care who they are, frankly, when they say, you know what, we're going to deport all of these people. I wish that were the case. I'm just not sure that I believe it because of what the Biden administration is doing. Like you said, Trump, 1 million people let go into the interior, Biden, 2 million. And quite frankly, I mean, that 2 million number for Biden seems extremely low to me. But just I mean, I'm in Orlando, Florida, and I got to tell you, Anna, we went from seeing homeless people on the corner begging for money around the way from me, not too far from my home, to a bunch of illegal immigrants. I mean, this is here in Florida. And now recently, Governor DeSantis, I forget exactly, basically signed some type of order into place where, listen, you cannot hire illegal immigrants. And then all of a sudden it was weird. It was like they disappeared overnight. It's the craziest thing. But I mean, these numbers are so insane. It's hard for me to imagine that we're going to be able to get rid of all these people and that Republicans will have the political will to do what they say when this issue, just because of what you stated. First off, people are going to be here 3 to 7 years. If they even show back in court, many of these people are going to have children. And do you believe them? Do you believe Republicans and or Democrats when they say these people are going back?
Based on what I've seen, action wise, I don't have any reason to believe anything's going to change soon. And the Biden administration has, I don't even, over 100 times sent me responses when I asked something saying, well, we're waiting for Congress to act to fix this. We
That's
cannot do
amazing.
anything. And it's interesting because Republicans hated when Obama took that executive action and created the DACA program to protect certain people who were brought here as minors.
Sure.
So now another Democratic administration is not taking executive action to that extent and using its inaction to say, well, we
Interesting.
can't do anything.
Interesting. Very good point. This parole program, will you explain that to us a little bit, Anna, so that we just understand that better?
Yeah, so over the past 2 years, we've seen people from 4 countries primarily coming to the U.S. Not the Mexican and Central American, Northern and Central American countries we used to see. We're seeing people from Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, all from authoritarian regimes, unsafe countries, just completely unstable. And so the Biden administration late last year said, we're going to create this program where you can apply to come into the US and you essentially fly into a US airport, and be allowed to remain in the country under humanitarian parole, rather than you coming up through the Darien jungle, walking all the way, traveling by bus to get to the border and crossing illegally. So Republicans have said it's just a way to get the border arrests down, um, but you're bringing people in through a process that's not legitimate. And in fact, when the government released the border numbers on Friday, they included those 50,000 from this parole program in August in the figure. So it's ironic because it's not even like it's not being put in there. It's they're trying to lower the border numbers or the perception of it, but they put the number in there. So um, yeah, so they're starting to see a lot more people use it. But again, it looks like this sort of backdoor. It's similar to how when we airlifted or evacuated from Kabul, Afghanistan 2 years ago,
Right.
we brought home tens of thousands of Afghan nationals who it was like, well, they're not refugees. You have to go through a very extensive process to become a refugee, and it's a legal term. So when people say these are refugees coming, I'm always like, well, no, not legally. Um, so they were given parole too on a year and a half, 2 year basis. And so this is the same sort of situation, but again, it's hoping that, oh, there's going to be something sort of done in the long run that legalizes permanently everybody under this program and the Afghans who are here. But it's just it's saying, sorry, we're trying to help you right now, but some people would say it's screwing you in the long run. It's setting you up for, why didn't my work authorization get reapproved? Now I can't work in the US legally.
Huh.
What am I going to do? It's all sorts of nightmares. And if you want to go about it yourself as an immigrant, try to navigate the system. I mean, think of you or I going to a country where you don't speak the language. You're
Sure.
trying to figure out legal stuff. We can't even figure out. I just got a passport for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do they accept my birth certificate? I haven't gotten it back in 8 weeks. So I'm hoping it's going to come back. I think it's good. Going on the state website and figuring stuff out.
Right. Right.
It's like hard enough for basic stuff sometimes. And if you don't have an immigration lawyer and the money for one, how the heck do you navigate as an immigrant even all the processes they've put in place? When you say, oh, well, my neighbor and my friend went to the US and got released and now they're in, Chicago,
Sure.
it's far more compelling than Biden saying the border's not open.
Yeah, I mean, it leads me to believe that all the left wants, all the Biden administration wants, is this is a way to bring in a permanent underclass and essentially to replenish votes or to add votes to the Democrat Party. That's me saying it. I know that's not you saying it, Anna. You're so professional at this, but that's the only conclusion I could arrive at. By the way, I just want to encourage you guys to follow Anna on Twitter. It's at Anna. I'm going to try to say it, Anna. At Anna _ Giaritelli. Giaritelli. Does that
Yeah.
sound close?
Yeah.
All right. All right. So you spell that Giaritelli. So Anna _ Giaritelli. So make sure you follow her. She is a Homeland Security reporter with the Washington Examiner. She's been doing a fabulous job. Honestly, we booked her, I believe, last weekend or Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And then Elon Musk tweeted her afterwards. So we feel extremely special, even though we're not Anna, but we're just like somehow connected. You know how that we try to get every little bit of credit we can, Anna. So that's what we're
Listen,
going
you
for
booked
here.
me ahead of it. So, I mean, I give you that Totally. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And she's honest. Look at that. And she's honest. I absolutely love her. All right. So, Anna, all right, just I have some specific questions that I just want to kind of go through as quickly as we can. And I've been reading through her columns. And again, I encourage you to check her out at Washington Examiner. But one is titled Biden Makes Border History with Most Immigrant Encounters in August Ever Recorded. We've been going through some of those particular numbers. You say here in this particular column, and I want to get your response to this, at the southern border, 181,059 immigrants were arrested after walking around the ports of entry and crossing into the U.S. Approximately 74,000 of that number were single adults. 19,000 arrived with a family member, and 13,500 were unaccompanied children. Okay, so this is what concerns me, and several things just in this paragraph alone that you detail. These the 181 that were arrested after walking around the ports of entry. So we're talking about a lot of these people that are not necessarily, I'm shocked that you have these numbers, that are not necessarily being accounted for, that aren't even going through the ports of entry. So sometimes I just wonder, I mean, how many people have actually entered our country? Secondly, 74,000 of those were single adults. I wonder how many single adult males were in that. 19,000 arrived with a family member. How do we verify?
Actually 91,000, I believe.
Okay. All right.
So even more.
Okay, so even more, and then at least 19 that arrived, 1,000 with a family member. How do we even know? How do we even verify that these people are family members? And then 13,500 that were unaccompanied children. God knows what happened to them on their trek here. This is, I mean, this is evil to me.
We've had over 300,000 children show up at the border without a parent since Biden took office. I mean, 300,000, that number doesn't ever get old to me, as it goes up every month. I can't even find the words for it, right?
Yeah.
It's just incredible. Under the Trump administration, they used a program, it's called Rapid DNA, where in a matter of minutes, I think it was actually 90 seconds, you took, I believe it was oral swabs from person claiming to be
Right.
a
I
parent.
forgot all about that. Right. Okay.
And, because they were starting to see more of those fake families. And ICE had shared with me about this, and I was supposed to go with them, and then COVID hit. But ICE was actually at like the Fort Lauderdale airport. They would see these kids being recycled. So come over the border with
Oh,
someone,
wow.
get released to the same house in Chicago. I believe it was like a house with like 50 kids where they'd found were going there. And then the kid gets sent back with a sort of like someone to walk with the kid to Mexico to then come over the border with another adult who would pay to use this kid. And so ICE was going to have me at the Fort Lauderdale airport with them, watching as in the last moments before the child boards the flight, this person, the escort, would just disappear and just
No
let the
way.
kid board alone. So they were going to be there to take custody of the kid who's involuntarily, even if the kid's willing to do this, they're a kid, they can't.
Yeah, sure.
To take custody of the kid and save this child. So all that to say, the Biden administration stopped using rapid DNA. So we don't know the extent to which this is happening. Under Trump, 30% of the families that were tested, this isn't 30% of the families, but the ones that were actually tested,
Okay.
did turn out to be unrelated.
Wow.
So Border Patrol and ICE are very good. I mean, these guys are trained in reading people.
Sure.
So, they're very good at saying, we're not sure about this. Let's just test. So now we don't know. And the Biden administration, I've asked them before, why aren't you doing this again? And they've said, well, agents are very good at determining who is and who isn't related. So it's like, it wouldn't hurt. It's very
Yeah.
quick, but when you're trying to process, we're having, about 8,000 people crossing illegally at the southern border every day who are being apprehended. A 90-second test is just another delay.
No kidding. That's
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Anna. That is such a great point. I had completely forgotten about that. You're absolutely right. 90 seconds. I mean, okay. Yeah, a 90-second delay that wouldn't hurt anything. You also say this: custom officers at the southern border ports encounter 51,913 people who did not have documents to enter, but may have claimed asylum. So the question I would ask are these people being let go into the interior just for making an asylum claim? Like you have no real legitimate paperwork to say you're in a, you should be granted asylum, but you just make the claim and you're just let into the interior. There's nothing beyond that, is there?
So what the numbers mean? So the first number you'd said last time was 180,000 total. So they went and came in illegally. This is 50 something thousand who is doing what you're supposed to do if you want to seek asylum.
Okay.
You
Okay.
come up to the port of entry where you or I would drive across, and you say to the officer, "Hi, I'm from Russia, and I came here, and I'm asking for asylum."
Okay.
Other people would just show up and say, "Please let me in, help," and then sort of get put into a process. But that's the way that the Trump administration had said for years. Please, this is what you should be doing. Don't cross illegally. Go to the port of entry. And so 51,000 is compared to like what we used to see every month was 10,000. So it's also, completely overwhelmed the ports of entry, and you might get released to be admitted into the country and seek asylum if you go about it this way. Um, but if the Biden administration were to say, "Listen, we guarantee and will actually follow through on if you cross illegally and you're seeking asylum, we will send you back to Mexico. You have to go through a port of entry," which there are dozens across the southern border.
Right.
You would at least streamline that process so there's a way to seek asylum, but you're not having to do mass releases into the
Right.
country.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a fair point. And you mentioned another number that actually shocked me, and I don't know why. It shocked me, but we haven't been paying much attention at all to our northern border. But now you've written, and again, I'm speaking to Anna Giaritelli of the Washington Examiner. Check her out on Twitter at Anna_Giaritelli. And I may be butchering her name, but she is so kind. So Homeland Security reporter. Check her out, Anna. If you go on Twitter and honestly you type in Anna Giari, she just pops up. So thank God for that. And like she said, Elon Musk retweeted her over the weekend. So I'm so glad that he's done that to bring more attention to this issue, because it seems to me that the politicians in D.C., both on the left and the right, frankly, are trying to. There's no doubt the Biden administration, they don't want this to be an issue. But I am so tired of the feckless Republicans that seem to just, for some reason, they get really scared when it comes to using the power of the purse to do what they can to curtail some of this nonsense. But the northern border, 20,000 illegal immigrants were arrested on the northern border, Anna. And then I just have a couple more questions for you. I want to ask you about impeaching Mayorkas, your take on that, whether or not you think that is a good idea. You wrote about this CBP One app. It seems like the Mexican cartels have hijacked that. So I'm going to get your take on that as well. You've written about that extensively. So anyway, but let's start with the northern border.
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers right now just to double check. The northern border typically sees the far more people attempting to enter the country who are then found to be on the terrorist watch list.
Really?
Yes. So I'm looking at the numbers. It looks like 17 or 18,000 people on the northern border were denied entry or didn't have documents in August. 1,000 entered illegally. Yes. And so we tend to see people flying into airports who are on the terror watch list. And that means they might be the family member or connected to someone who is, involved with a terrorist group. That person isn't necessarily a terrorist. But compared to the southern border, where we've seen in total um, over 100 people on the terror watch list since the fiscal year began last October. Every year we're blowing the record, 3 years now, out of the roof. But in comparison, we see several hundred at the northern border trying to enter through airports, sometimes like a land port of entry driving across, and they're caught by customs folks at those ports. So when you fly in from overseas and you have to go through customs, so it's not, is it concerning that people are trying to walk over the southern border illegally? Of course. But there's also people who end up being on the watch list who are trying to fly into the country or driving over from, Vancouver into Washington State. But yeah, we have seen the northern border numbers go up. But in total, the number who illegally crossed and were arrested was 1,000 for the northern border last month. The southern border was over 180,000. So, I've gone to the northern border before and see how Border Patrol works. It's a whole different environment. And they have no wall up there, and it's about double the length of the southern border. So it's
Easy.
wide open. It's beautiful. It's wide open too.
Yeah, beautiful scenery, but it's wide
Beautiful,
open.
yeah. I endorse going to Vermont. It's a great place.
Wow,
but
that is,
for that, Mexicans didn't used to need. I'm not sure if they still do actually a visa to fly into Canada, and so every once in a while we see countries that have. If you don't require a visa to fly into Canada, we see this with Europeans. They'll fly
sure.
in, a lot of Romanians, and then they'll come across into New Hampshire or Maine. And
I did
so,
not know that. I did
oh
not
yeah,
know that.
tend to see it with Europeans. But sometimes, every once in a while, you see, a group of 8 citizens from Mexico, arrested in Montana coming across.
Wow.
So
Okay. That is okay. That is fascinating. Alejandro Mayorkas, it seems to me that all of the distractions in Washington D.C. for some reason he's skirting an impeachment. Basically, I do believe that he should be impeached. Although I know some can argue, what good would it do because Biden would just reappoint someone else that's that's basically working for Biden. I know these are Biden's policies, but do you think that Mayorkas should be impeached anyway? I mean, I can't stand the guy. I mean, complete and utter liar. Obviously, either incompetent or evil at his job, one or the other.
my colleagues and I in the Capitol did a piece 2 weeks ago before Republicans said, "Hey, we're going to focus on impeaching President Joe Biden." And we found that Republicans behind the scenes, more moderate Republicans, were saying going after Mayorkas is a waste. And with what we've found now with Hunter Biden, there's more stuff there to pursue the president than the Secretary of Homeland Security in terms of who is responsible for
Sure.
how border policies are being implemented.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but the House Homeland Security Committee is began, I believe, in June on a multi-part investigation to look at impeaching Mayorkas. And Republicans, when they won back the House last November, McCarthy had said, we're going to move to impeach him, and we're going to build the border wall, and we're going to secure the border. And as much as people say things, and you're allowed to say what you want on the campaign trail and such, it's not happened to any extent. And so, you know, it's like, why is no one holding him accountable for this? Um,
It's
because we
fascinating.
don't, certainly the border's gotten worse, and there's been no change. So the committee is still working through its hearings, looking into this. But at the end, Mark Green, who's the chairman, has sort of read the writing on the wall now that says, "Hey, we're going after Biden, not Mayorkas." So his hearings are sort of going to end with, yeah, and Mayorkas is responsible, but now we're going to pivot to not doing anything. We're going to support McCarthy over here instead. So,
Wow.
yeah.
All right. So then I would expect these numbers that we're seeing now will just continue to, at the very least, sustain, uh, perhaps even get worse if that's the case. Man, honestly, man, I just want to punch a wall sometimes. God help me. I feel like these guys, you're right. They're on the campaign trail. They say all the right things. Um, and that seems to be as far as it goes. And I do understand going after the big guy, obviously. Um, I get that, but I'm doubtful that that's going to go anywhere. So I suspect that we're just going to see a lot more people enter into the United States as quickly as they possibly can. I want to talk about these Mexican cartels and the CBP1 app here, Anna. You wrote a column on this. Republicans confront DHS for a lack of transparency on CBP1 app. Unacceptable. Talk to the audience about what that is and how the Mexican cartels are taking advantage of it. And again, I'm joined by Anna Giaritelli of the Washington Examiner. She is a Homeland security reporter. Make sure you follow her online. And again, we will have the information. We will connect to her Twitter feed in this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get our podcast. Also, follow me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find us. Also, mypillow.com is the sponsor for this program today. So go to mypillow.com, enter the promo code Carl, CARL. You get discounts. There's some discounts up to over 60% off. It's insane. So mypillow.com, radio podcast square, enter the my name, Carl, or give them a call, 800-858-0263, 800-858-0263. You're going to be supporting American jobs and American manufacturing and getting a good night's rest, by the way. So mypillow.com. All right. So now getting back to my guest, Anna. All right, this CBP1 app, this is a total joke. I want you, after I read your column, I was like, this is just a total joke. I feel like we're being, you remember Ashton Kutcher's old show Punked? I, I,
Ellie,
I feel
Ellie.
like, I feel like that's what we're living in. We're like American voters are just being punked.
So in January, the administration, and I apologize to listeners because I'm under this allergy under the weather, so my voice is scratchy. But there was this CBP1 app. CBP is Customs and Border Protection. It's 60,000 person federal agency, and it's what oversees customs at the ports. It oversees the Border Patrol. So we tend to say Customs and Border Patrol, but it's actually Customs and Border Protection, and Border Patrol's under them. They launched this app has been out there and used for customs, but they launched a feature in it, and that would allow people from 4 different countries, the 4 I named before: Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. If those migrants had already made it to northern Mexico, so we're in the northern half of Mexico, they could download this app and schedule an appointment to speak with a customs officer at the port of entry about their claim to be admitted in, because we recognize, hey, these are 4 countries that are most likely to be sending people who would want to apply for asylum and probably have a valid case.
Isn't that an incentive in and of itself to even have this app? And I mean, for
Yeah.
illegals across, I mean, this is okay. Anyway,
The
sorry to
idea,
interrupt.
is you have to be in northern Mexico, right?
Okay,
The
okay,
app is geofenced. So if I were to use, if I was in Ecuador, or say Mexico City is basically the halfway point. So let's say
okay,
I'm 2 miles south of Mexico City.
okay.
I'm in the app. I'm trying to schedule an appointment so that I can talk with a customs officer. Instead of just walking into the country illegally, I wouldn't be able to. It's going to say, you're not in the right location. So what the cartels discovered quickly was this is not good for them, right? They found a way to use a VPN, which is a certain technology that overrides the location from where it gets around the location you're in. So let's say I'm in Guatemala, which is directly south of Mexico.
Right.
the cartels will say, hey, Mexico is doing this thing at the border to Guatemala where they'll let you into the country if you have a CBP1 app appointment, which theoretically cannot happen because you have to be in northern Mexico to get one, right?
Right.
The cartels were able to get around that because they were selling these services and advertising it on WhatsApp and different migrant chat groups, on social media, saying, hey, pay this fee, we'll get you an appointment. And then you show up at the Mexico Guatemala border with proof of your appointment, and they will let you in and not give you a problem as you navigate through the country. So we exposed
God.
this in, I believe it was August. We got some documents. We weren't able to publish or quote them because it would have hurt our sources.
Sure.
But pretty damning documents that, even we were shocked. The Mexican cartels are brilliant. They have no rules. They don't have to go through certain procedures. They just do what they have to do to keep making money. And so it's a new fee they're able to sell to people. And so the Customs and Border Protection did not deny that this was happening. They did not deny, as we saw, that Mayorkas himself had been briefed about this happening and was concerned. What they said was that the app has been hacked. The app had not been, I'm sorry, the app had not been hacked,
Right.
which was never our allegation. So, in saying that, it was like, no, we didn't say that was hacked. And so, it leaves it to, we've had members of Congress call for an investigation, but it just leaves us at, another way that people can get around a legal method theoretically. And yeah, continue. And when you can't get an appointment, that's the other thing. People are saying this app is overwhelmed. We're just going to cross illegally because there's only so many appointments per day.
Right.
We're not going to wait.
Yeah. If you were to become president for a day, Anna, what would you want done to fix this issue at the border? What have you seen in your travels going to the border? How can this be fixed?
I would look at the programs that in the past have had the greatest impact and consider those as, if you implement them again, probably would have the greatest impact.
Sure.
The Trump administration had this remain in Mexico policy,
Yeah, I loved it.
but it barely made a dent. And Republicans are huge into it, but there were so few people being placed into it
Fair. Okay.
that it may have been effective, but it didn't. So I think you have to, if you don't want the problem at the tail end with now we have millions of people in the country waiting for court hearings, and if they don't get, approved, you're not going to send the 6,500 ICE officers who do arrests after millions of people. You just can't do it. So rather than have that problem, I would say either keep people in custody, which is another problem in and of itself, because then you're liable for people. You need facilities and resources to detain tens of thousands of people, and change the court processes so that you can actually conduct these hearings. I think unless you detain people at the border and say, listen, there's this policy, we can't hold families more than 20 days, but we're going to find a way to get these hearings done in 20 days. Or you say, hey, I'm sorry, you have to wait in Mexico or we will return you. I think those alleviate a lot of the back end problems.
Yeah.
So then you're able to focus even more resources on the front end, whether that be detaining people at the border or just not allowing people in. If you cross illegally, no ifs, ands, or buts, you will be returned, and we want you to apply for asylum at the port of entry. So immigrant advocates would say that's not fair. You're legally allowed to seek asylum under international law, which is true.
But shouldn't
So
you should seek in another country first, though?
that's also, a case. And the U.S. had a policy, and I believe the Biden administration is trying to re-implement it, where if you go through multiple countries and you don't claim, even one other country, and you don't
Sure.
claim asylum, it's like, are you really in a life or death situation fleeing?
Yeah.
Asylum is for 5 different types of persecution.
Right.
Um, it's not for what we see so much of as economic migrants or migration. So, yeah, I think we get so used to saying asylum, and you don't necessarily associate that with the the rare circumstances that it is meant to help people for.
And that
And
is the point.
Mexico has also seen record high number of people seeking asylum last year.
Hmm.
So all these other countries, particularly in our hemisphere, in the Western Hemisphere, are are seeing just extraordinary migration throughout the hemisphere, up and down, all around.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the point. I'm glad you said that. And what I like about you, and I got to tell you this. You have people on to talk about the border, and you there's always a political bent. Listen, I'm on the right. I make no bones about it. But you're extremely fair. You give the information. I love that. You can kind of you take from it what you will. You talked about what's worked, what hasn't worked, or how effective it's been. So kudos to you for doing that. I really do appreciate that. I know Washington Examiner isn't necessarily left wing at all by any stretch of the imagination, but you're just so fair and honest. I really do appreciate that type of reporting, because I do want to be able to make up my own mind, regardless of the fact that, listen, I know even when I ask questions, I have a bent. I think anybody who says that in media is just straight up liars. To be frank, so I do just appreciate your clear reporting. So thank you so much for what you do. I really do appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. And Anna, if you'll just stick with us to make sure we upload you while we close out, I'd appreciate it. All right, guys. Again, please follow Anna. She is good Lord, she is a Homeland Security reporter with Washington Examiner. Again, Anna_Giaritelli. Man, it is so crazy. I'm gonna have to say that name 1,000 times to get it right. So Giaritelli, Giaritelli. I've never heard that last name before. I got to be honest with you, Anna. So
It's a
you're
one of a kind. We came through Ellis Island from Italy in I think the late 1910s, early
wow.
1920s.
That's cool. All right. That is cool. So honestly, but if you go, the good news is if you go and Google her or go on Twitter and just start typing in her name, she pops up easily because of that. So thank God for that. But again, with the Washington Examiner, make sure you check out her work, read her work, give her a follow on Twitter. And just get involved. I really, we have Republicans that I don't think want to do anything about the border crisis. Quite frankly, definitely Democrats. Democrats don't. You have Mexican cartels that are outsmarting our own administration. Who, frankly, let's be honest, the Democrats, at least in my opinion, the Democrats want a permanent underclass, and they want to keep issuing. They want more and more people to come into the United States illegally. I think it's part of their plan. Frankly, that's coming from me. But honestly, I don't think Republicans are doing enough to try to curtail this problem. But anyway, Anna, I so appreciate you joining us. And guys, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. Again, remember to support Mike Lindell at My Pillow. Again, fabulous deals available, 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee, 800-858-0263, 800-858-0263, or mypillow.com, promo code Carl. Until next time, guys, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.